on the presenters in OBS. So it was a lot of fun. And what has happened really very quickly, in my opinion, over the past 5 to 10 years, esports has gone from a teen pastime to the international stage. And this is literally way bigger than America or the United States, Europe, China. This is a global thing. And one of the things that we can take away from this, I hope that you'll take away from this presentation, is there are hundreds of different job opportunities for students to learn from. And I was speaking with the University of Tennessee, and they're so excited to implement an esports program because it allows them to really have a program at their school that students can get context to the content they're learning at school, whether it's business or management. I mean, if we look at some of these, entertainment, administration, sales, communications, IT, broadcast and media, all of these major employers and job opportunities are involved in esports now. So it is as big or bigger than traditional sports, and it's really exciting. So just high level, what is driving this phenomenon? Well, something too important to understand is that the competition itself is a major driving motivation for athletes of any sport. And competition really pushes players forward, and they get to work on essential skills that make them a better person, a better athlete. They need to be able to communicate. They need to be able to hone their craft and spend time becoming better at something, which is a valuable skill. And we're going to go over some of those skills. And one of the other high-level things that's happened and why esports is so explosive right now is because we've got amazing video games, advanced video game software and hardware, kind of all coming together right now with massive amounts of bandwidth and internet speeds available, live streaming really coming into play with Twitch, Mixer, the availability of video games, and just multiplayer interactivity has really matured to a point where these technologies are allowing esports to really flower and bloom. Now, at this intersection, we have spectators, something that 10 years ago we didn't think we had so many of. It's interesting to understand and know that at your university, at your school, there are many kids who just want to come and watch the esports tournament. So we need to be prepared for spectators. And whether that's happening online or in person eventually, that is something to consider. The competitions themselves are great ways to create common ground. Again, a place where students can feel accepted in an educational environment where our universities and educational systems can foster a healthy environment for esports. Versus, and I'll just throw this out there, late nights at home in their basement. We want to bring this out of maybe some potentially dark side of esports into the education system so that we can foster it in a good light. Now, just to give you an idea of some of the top esports tournaments, these tournaments are creating spaces where we can get together, where groups of friends can play video games casually or for tournaments, and they can develop relationships together, whether it's an informal team that they're proud to be a part of, or a real team that's a varsity level team at their school, where they're honing their strengths and their weaknesses and really investing in themselves and becoming maybe a leader and finding out which ones of their friends are the compassionate ones, which ones are the ones who can give them real-time advice and learning and working as a team. So teamwork and communication is key here. And perhaps, some students are meeting up at local gaming centers to play competitively. Maybe they're playing at home. I think that's a reality. But we want to create a common ground area at our schools and our universities where we can help foster positive environments for students to work individually and in groups with coaches who can really be, pastors, if you will, in a way, to, bring people together and create a great community. So it's so important to establish an accepting esports culture inside of your school. And that's what's really happening. It's culture is pushing the movement forward. Parents and educators, this is a chance for you to create this common ground to help students excel in a sport that they're not only
Paul might recognize now that your audio is gone. So if those in the Zoom panel can hear me, just bear with us. Okay, great. Maybe something just unplugged in the studio.
that. Am I back?
Yep. Oh, there we go.
You are back, Paul. Yes. Was it just a cable that unplugged?
All right, sorry about that. I should have known those batteries were dying. Okay.
Uh-oh.
All right, I'm back. Sorry. Let's start over there. Okay, so how can students get the most out of video games? I think that's a question that a lot of parents and educators are thinking about. And I write about it a lot in the book. And one of the things we have to realize is that culture and human history and identity are really the things that we're gonna hone in on this presentation. And the study of video games themselves in this day and age have become kind of integrated into young people's lives. So it's quite different than the 1980s when we were playing Pac-Man, if you will. But I do think it's important to try to put video games into a cultural perspective that understands where we are today. We're in 2020. Right? I mean, it's a lot different than 5, 10, 20 years ago when, video games were much different. So in 2010, Jose Zagal published a book called Luda Literacy. And it literally is defining and understanding game education. And if you are an educator and you're trying to help students understand esports, you really need to read this book, because it helps students break down the key elements inside of a video game, going beyond just playing the video game, but having the ability to understand the meaning and respect to what the game itself is, how it has been designed, and then going another step forward and understanding how to make the games yourself. And he argues that if you can do these three things, you can play the game, understand the game, and make a game. You don't have to make an advanced video game, but make a game, it could be tic-tac-toe. That whole process is really educational. And he argues that there's a lot of journaling that can go involved that can really help students understand the video games they're playing. The trouble with video games, which again, this is the reason why education needs to embrace video games so much, is that there can be a disconnect from reality. There can be social isolation, and there can be physical health issues. So we really need to address these issues by bringing them into the education space to guard against them. The trouble with video games, of course, possible brain damage, addiction, aggression, even attention deficit disorder has been linked to playing too many video games. But with that being said, the future of competitive video games look very bright, and there are many legitimate reasons for concern from educational perspective. And Howard Jones from Bristol University, I think, put it best when he said video games have a light and a dark side. And the best way to address these concerns is to shepherd students toward the light side. And the light side is, of course, all the great things, the usable skills, the economics, the thoughtfulness, the tasking, the socialization, the creativity, and of course, all of those great jobs, those STEM career opportunities that come from esports. So if as a parent, and I have 3 kids and I think about this a lot, it's nice to know that they will get hand-eye coordination, analysis, logic, economic management, logistics, teamwork, problem solving, quick thinking. But there's some challenges to the growth of esports and how, as a parent, many people feel. And I think that as education starts to embrace esports, we can kind of come together and make a better place for esports to happen. So I'm going to kind of end it there because there's so much to talk about. I do want to talk a little bit about live streaming esports tournaments because it creates a lot of great goals and opportunities for students. You can take the gaming computers and connect them with a production area where there's an observer PC, and that's some of those pictures that you saw earlier. We can definitely get into the technology side of things if people want to talk about how to live stream an esports tournament. It's certainly mentioned in detail in the Esports and Education book, but it takes a little bit about production technology to do it. But the students themselves are then learning broadcast technology. They're really excited about being a camera operator or an on-screen talent or a journalist or play-by-play announcer as part of this event. And so there's some slides here that regarding how to set up an esports tournament. I don't think we really need to get into detail because I'd much rather bring in our panel and hear from you guys about what you're doing. I see my buddy Bubba is here. Can you jump in first, Bubba, and tell us what
Sure.
a little bit about your organization and what you guys have been up to? I know you guys put together one of the first curriculums for esports. Am I correct in saying that?
We are part of promoting it. Yeah, the gaming concepts curriculum is the only STEM certified esports curriculum for high schools created by a principal and a teacher out in Wichita, Kansas. They started about 5 years ago in this process and published it last year. It's the only comprehensive textbook for esports in the high school space. Lesson plans curriculum, it's 148 pages. Yeah, we love promoting it because it's absolutely free. I think it's the only esports curriculum on Microsoft Educator, been downloaded over 100,000 times in 40 countries, and we just want to give it to as many people as possible. And it's being used in a couple hundred schools right now across the United States, and we don't really know the numbers across the world because it's free and we're just giving it away. So we'll get better at data tracking in version 2, of course. But yeah, we're happy to put it out. And it's not just like how to game. That's like just 20 minutes of your lesson time out of the 81 lessons that Mike and Christy created. It's all the stuff you talked about: social emotional learning, critical thinking. There's lesson plans on healthy habits and wrist exercises and how to build a PC, how to be a shoutcaster. So yeah, what I really love about it is just the ability to take things out of it and use it in any class, but you can do it as an after school program or combine it with a computer science class and make it a full credit course. So we really love promoting it because it's free and we want everybody to have it.
Well, I'm so glad that you guys are doing that. Let's take a step back though. And I want to ask you a little bit about how is it being used? So you have this esports. Is it being taught in schools? Is it a take home thing? I know a lot of students are doing stuff from home.
Yeah, sure, Paul. I mean, before COVID, let's just say it was an after school program combined with maybe an esports club. Or it could be an in school actually credit bearing program. So there's opportunity for either or. What you see in COVID is there's really not. I mean, esports is kind of still available for high school students specifically and middle school students that we work with, even the college students we work with. I mean, there's 3,000 high schools competing in high school esports, 1,000 middle schools, 2,000 colleges. So they're out there and they still have the ability to compare to traditional sports where my background is. But yeah, and ideally you can use that curriculum in school, after school, at home, and still be able to teach all the fundamentals of gaming concepts is what it's called. And it's on our website. You can grab it.
Wow. I love it. That is so cool. I actually have a little bit of video footage from our Stream Geek Summit here. Let me see if I can pull this up. There we go. Tell me a little bit about your experience with hosting esports tournaments. One of the things that we found, obviously, it's like a magnet for esports, interested students. And I found that not only do they love it, but there's a lot of extra additional roles that these students can be a part of beyond just video gaming. And that was one of the things that really caught my eye.
Yeah, Paul, you hit the nail on the head earlier with, there's a lot of different charts out there from our friends at NASIF to other folks who have created that kind of wheel or that Venn diagram of all the things about. You can take out esports and put basketball in the middle of it, and still, the media folks who are doing stuff up in the booth, or the people who are running the event, or the referees, or whatever. There's still that whole ecosystem of jobs potentially that, luckily, they're a lot more STEM related than many other industries, which we love. Being a STEM accredited organization, we love having that ability. But when we look at events, I've been to a lot of events. I don't have to work events like I used to when I was with the YMCA and the Chamber of Commerce, like running sport events for years. But it's nice to be involved in some of those live events that we used to have before COVID, and I know some are coming back. And they are big. A lot of people do look at literacy and esports as the top down of the big League of Legends type events, or, large events in South Korea. Then they learn about Ninja. Then they learn about, streaming. Then they say, oh, I can get a college scholarship. So it's a lot of top down learning literacy for people, non-endemic to the space. But really, the tournaments are a great way for local things to happen, just like your local baseball tournament. There's a lot of opportunity for community and engagement, plus hiring people to do things and set up computers and run events and use your equipment that you guys promote. That's really good equipment to put out and run media production. So there's a lot of opportunity inside that space.
So I'd like to open this up to our panel here. There's so much great opportunity. What are you thinking about, Julia?
I was just thinking, having been an adjunct in a journalism department, you could see where a program like this could sort of be logically tacked onto kind of a journalism and communications department, or it could be in sort of another, like maybe arts or STEM related department. And so it's just really a fascinating time, because it does cover all of those different areas, because writing is certainly involved too.
Yeah, not to mention art. And
yes,
people designing the games and designing the storylines, like you're talking about writing. Yeah, every other industry leads to esports as well. Yeah. And you're exactly right, Julia. I get to adjunct for teach at a university here in Kansas City, but I just get to do sports. I love that there's ability to take some of those aspects and what you're doing in journalism and being able to apply those to the field and the industry of esports that really does have so many other opportunities that students, especially at the high school level, can find opportunity now, and not just competitively go play in college, but they can use scholarships they earn through competitive play in high school to go do whichever degree they choose.
The other thing, it's so interesting, when I did work at the local radio station, there were students knocking down our door and you know what they wanted to do? They wanted to get involved in sports broadcasting, almost exclusively. But there's just not enough opportunities at radio stations. So the fact that esports has sort of swept the country, if you will, in this phenomena, it is a great opportunity for students to develop those skills without having to try to, get through a local radio station, which is not always an easy thing to do.
Well, look at what we're doing right now. We're doing free television, right? We're doing free broadcasting, which anybody with a phone can do as well. What we've seen influencers create brands out of it with their phone over the past 15 years with smartphones. So look at what the technology has given us to be able to produce and direct and execute. I remember my brother, before that, we using a VHS recorder that when my dad worked at Radio Shack to, make a movie. Like, we've had technology for a long time, but now the expansion and the growth of it to be able to live stream stuff like this is huge for everyone to be able to create and put out content.
That's right.
I see we're getting some questions in the chat, Julia. Is anyone else in our panel interested in jumping in and saying hi?
Yes, this is Sergio Gordon. How you guys doing?
Hi, doing well.
Awesome. Yeah, so I was just I noticed you had mentioned it in the in the beginning about the esports and EDU booklet or book that you guys have. I was wondering, is that available for sale, or is there a way that we can get access to that? I do have some questions outside the technical aspect of running an online tournament.
I'm putting the link in there now, Sergio, in the chat. So you can actually just go right there and download the book.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Sure.
the book's totally free. And I apologize for going so quickly over the technical aspects of live streaming a tournament. Let's look at that together really quickly. I'll high level look at this. I put this together. It's high level, but I want to show this off. So essentially, from a high level, there's gaming computers, right? All the computers for esports. There's an observer PC, which I didn't know about until we did our first tournament, but an observer PC, and then obviously a production PC, a PC to do the live streaming and recording of the event. The observer PC essentially is on the same network as the gaming PCs, and it essentially runs the video game, but it doesn't play the video game. It just has like an overview of any view of any player playing the video game. In fact, in Rocket League, it's pretty incredible. You can actually capture like an overhead view of everything going on. It stays to the player closest to the ball, and it's really meant to be kind of the view that you want to watch the game with. So that sorry, go ahead.
No, just a quick question. Is that a built-in feature or functionality of Rocket League game, or is that a certain software that needs to be downloaded onto the Observer PC?
So it's Rocket League. It could be Fortnite. Pretty much all of these games have this at this point. And so you run the client, you join the same video game room as all the students are playing, and you just say, I'm joining as an observer. And what we're showing here is all of those games, all of those computers are on the exact same local area network. But with the observer PC, we're taking the video output of it and we're capturing it into our production PC. Now, it is possible to actually have two monitors and run OBS on one monitor and the game on the other and use just a single observer PC as well. Just depends on how you want to lay it out. But as you're seeing here, what we're doing is we're putting a capture card, an HDMI capture card. It takes the HDMI out of the observer PC and it brings it in USB into the production PC so that it's almost like a webcam. Like whatever the observer PC is seeing is being brought into OBS or vMix or Wirecast, which is generally used for live streaming and recording the event.
Understood.
So if you're with me there, generally what people will do is a picture-in-picture. So we were showing that off at the beginning of this presentation where the background is the observer PC, which is showing the game. That's what most people are interested in seeing. But picture-in-picture from time to time could be the play-by-play announcer. You know, it could be a view of the actual kids in the room playing the video game. And from a high level, on the network side of things, you've got your internet, right, provided by your router or your modem. You've got your network switch, which is connecting all of these computers together. And the observer PC and the production PC are obviously connected to that network. And then adding a couple cameras and a microphone to that layout. Now we've got a couple cameras, whether that's a camera on the play-by-play presenter, a camera on the students, a camera behind the scenes, maybe a joystick controller for a student camera operator to give them a job and something to do. The production PC generally has an audio interface. So that audio is being picked up, maybe the ambiance of the room, maybe the players yelling and screaming when they win. Obviously, the audio from the game will come through the observer PC. And then, yeah, a lot of stuff is going over the network. So this is showing a network of some cameras, some joysticks, those Rocket League PCs, all running over DHCP to get their IP addresses, the observer PC and the production PC.
That's awesome. And are these diagrams in the booklet as well?
They are, yeah. It's explained in a lot more detail in the book.
That's perfect. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Great question.
The good thing about those diagram, Sergio, is being able to do this on your own or start something. A lot of tournaments out there that are BYOC, bring your own computer type events, or just smaller tournaments. You have this dynamic of, and this is something I want to warn against, is you have this dynamic of gamers building that setup, but not being event planners. So event planners for events is also a very integral component for having people who can market and sell and promote the event, as well as manage people, because as gamers sometimes we are not always the easiest to work with, or have the right personalities for people, right? So always, if you're looking at starting an event, definitely use PTZOptics stuff, because you're going to have a really great image, and you're going to be able to pump that stuff in really well for your videos, even if you do online, like doing what we're doing now with those cameras and devices. But having an event manager, just like you need a wedding planner for a wedding, or a conference having an event person, you need those things, because that's what a lot of events run into, is that not having those two dynamics, and it's hard to find one person to do both.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Thank you for that.
So I see some chats coming in from social media. Did Timothy, did you want to jump in on any of this and weigh in on what you're up to? He might be.
Thank you for giving me the spot to speak. I appreciate it. Actually, I had a couple of thoughts and a couple of questions. Full Sail University, my alma mater, we have Full Sail Armada, which is our collegiate esports team. And I've been observing a lot of what they've been doing as far as their broadcasts and as far as their competitions and such. And my partner, Chris, he's actually on this broadcast too. We've been looking to try to institute the idea of a college style broadcast into a smaller arena, like middle school, like high school and middle school. But I've been finding a challenge as far as technology and connecting that into the infrastructure of the school system, or even in our case, just the one school that we're doing this as a test. My question for you or anyone on the panel is, what's been the most challenging part of bringing in the technology, not necessarily the talent, because the kids will get it. It's making all of the technology work and having it to match as close as possible. What's been some of the things that we should look out for when we're trying to institute our own programs into our schools?
That's a great question. Why don't you start, Bubba?
Yeah, I'll throw out, there's some people doing it really well across the country, especially in the high school or even recreational space. One I can really think of is, I'll connect you on LinkedIn with her, Leslie Bender Jetsy in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They have like 7 esports arenas in Burleson ISD, and they've got like a Smash Brothers Pro gamer as one of the coaches. So like there's funding there and availability. They got sponsors and stuff to do things really well. That's one end of the spectrum. And then the other end of the spectrum is, you're right, kids know it. Kids can come in and stream and run the whole event with a laptop, and they do everything just fine. And you don't even know what's happening, because these, like I said, this is TV production for most of them. Where everybody's learning on the go, watching YouTube videos how to do it. But I would say, get this Paul's book is really good for explaining this type of critical, important information on step by step on what to do. But then it's definitely reaching out to the people who are successful at this stuff. And like I said, the students will help you. If you're not engaged with the students, they obviously know the game. And when we work with the 3,000 high schools we work with that have esport clubs, most of the coaches and sponsors may have not even played a game, but they know how to teach, and they know how to coach, and they know how to support kids. And the kids, they get it. They understand it, right?
There's another resource too, which is we have this Esports and Education Facebook group. So you can feel free to join that. I think there's like 500 people in there or so, and they're just folks in education starting esports clubs. And so you can ask questions. A lot of people have joined that. And so it's a great little group. You can see a lot of people asking questions, sharing things that have worked. The other thing too that I think, obviously there's a lot of education that's needed, and the Esports in Education book has an online course that comes with it. So maybe some of it you're not interested in, but maybe the live streaming or setting up Esports Tournament part you are, and you can kind of skip around. But in general, the thing that's making it the most cost effective is the leveraging of networks, right? So the ability to take all these computers and, we're not plugging in HDMI cables, we're just plugging in Ethernet. So you set a laptop down, and if you have a little bit of networking knowledge and you know the IP address of these computers, you can connect them all together. And like NewTek, for example, has all these free tools, the NewTek NDI for bringing video in and sending video out, that is way, way more cost effective than like traditional HDMI and SDI video switchers. So learning a little bit about NewTek NDI, and then just a little bit about networking. Like, this is really an IP world. All of these computers are playing together over a local area network. And if you can tap into that, now you can bring in the webcams. Like, instead of running a million webcams, through some massive USB switcher or something, you just connect to them over the network one by one. And so knowing how to do that has save a lot of money, make it a lot easier. And, that there's a lot of educational information about that as well.
I had one other follow-up question, and this is along the lines of broadcasting. And Julia, I can appreciate your position of also being in media as well as I am as well. One of the things that I find that's a challenge is the image of shoutcasting versus actually doing it. And being that I cover Overwatch League, I've seen some of the professional shoutcasters and seen them, perform and do their thing. But on the broadcasting side is where I have a question. And this really comes down to your gear and what you do as a service. The production value of some of the smaller events doesn't match the production value of some of the events that use, PTZ type stuff and all that. My question for you is, what is the level of scale as far as broadcasting that someone can expect if they're using any of the things that you offer? Like, what's the ease of use? What's the learning curve? And what should someone to expect as far as like control of quality, especially when you're going over the net and you're worrying about, dropping bit rate and all that type of stuff? Like, what's your insight on that?
Man, that's an interesting question. I'll try to unpack some of the things. I mean, as far as like, the quality of the entire event can break down to, the quality of your audio, right? So people can actually hear that guy. And I have some tips for you there, and it's spoken about in the book. But then also like your internet connection, right? The bit rate itself. So the bit rate, right, is different than the frame rate and the resolution. So a lot of people don't realize that. So let's say I want it to be 4K, but I can only afford a bit rate of 2 megabits per second. You're basically stretching those pixels. You're not adding any more depth. So the bit rate is more important than the resolution. You'd rather have a 720p 2 megabit per second stream than a 4K one, because it would actually look better because you're getting, a smaller image. So I talk about it as, it's like a painting, right? The resolution is the size of your canvas, but the bit rate is the amount of paint that you're putting onto that canvas. And so you should really, you got to check and see how much download and upload speed do you have. A good rule of thumb is to don't use more than half of it. I don't know if your computer can even handle, streaming in a bit rate above 4 or 5 megabits per second as well. But 4 or 5 is, between 4 and 6 is where people say that's television quality. And most i7 computers can handle that. So the bit rate's pretty good. Now, if you want to stream to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, now you're looking at 4 or 5 megabits a second. Now you're at 4, 8, 12. That's a lot for a computer to handle. It's a lot of bandwidth for most places in the United States. You should look at using something like Restream, where you send one high quality stream to them, allow them to restream it in the cloud. As far as audio is concerned, you can get a good Shure microphone for not that expensive. You get an audio mixer. The thing about shoutcasters is they like to shout, right? They like to yell. So there are tools for protecting against that. And the main one is compression, right? When you compress the audio, you are pushing it down so it won't bounce up and peak and become like lost quality. So put some extra compression on there. It actually sounds better anyway, in my opinion, because we're used to announcers, getting excited, and they use a lot of compression. It makes it sound more like a fuller radio voice. In fact, my voice right now that you're hearing is heavily compressed. I've got a lot of compression on there, and I've got a lot of noise suppression on there because we're talking about noisy areas. It's talked about in the book a little bit, some tips there. But most live streaming software, even like OBS, has built-in tools for noise suppression and compression. And you're going to want both of those. And you're going to want a pair of headphones so that you can listen to it. You need to really have those headphones, or else you can't hear what you're doing.
Yeah, I'd say also testing everything before you go live with a like a secondary test account to pull that stream key from that test account to do things, which nobody follows that account, so you're not in the risk of anybody really watching it. But yeah, Paul's right. I don't know if Paul has this in the book, but even Twitch has good examples and good charts on bit rate compared to upload speed that will help you gauge it. I mean, I have gigabyte up down, so I'm pushing 9K on bit rate just because I can, and my computer's not even that fast, but it's what your internet can handle. And then he's definitely right with audio compression. I mean, the biggest thing is playing around with it and re-watching your stream, whatever you do. This is for any brand, any organization, any streamer, is to test everything. And then also for branding capabilities, go back and watch how you did your stream. How engaging was your production? Even if you're just a person talking on a podcast, go back and rewatch it and see how well you engage with your chat, engage with the questions, or engage with your interview person. And those are tips, but there's a lot of tips out there that need to be given out, and just searching for those answers is good.
Quite helpful. Thank you very much from everyone that's and their insight. This has really been helpful.
Oh, we do have a question on YouTube.
Okay, sure.
If you're able to answer. Couldn't the production PC be broadcasting over a separate broadband internet connection, thereby taking it out of the LAN being used by the gamers?
Yes, that is true. Now, what Tech in the City, Jim Ainge, a good friend of mine, is talking about here is that the production PC can be on multiple networks. And a lot of times it's true that if you're setting up a tournament, you're bringing your own local area network in. And a lot of times, and this goes back to, what Timothy was asking, dealing with the school's network, right? Is the school okay with us broadcasting a bunch of video on their network? Have we talked to the IT guys? Is their network capable of handling 10, 20, 100 esports video feeds, right? Depending on how ambitious your setup is. They might not be able to handle all of that. So usually, and this is I've always, with my esports tournaments, we're bringing in our own network, right? Not expensive. You buy a router and a network switch, right? You can do that for like $200 or $300. And you set up your own local area network for all the esports computers, the production PC, and the video PC. Now, the thing that you're not going to bring your own internet service provider, right? Now, you can purchase a LiveView Solo, which is a cellular bonding technology. So there's Teradek and there's LiveView and there's others where they take 2 or 3 cellular connections like Sprint and AT&T, and they bond them together, and you plug in your HDMI video output, and boom, it's a beautiful high bit rate wireless stream wherever you are, assuming you have internet, maybe a little Wi-Fi and cellular connection. Now, the other thing that you can do, and this is what Jim is talking about here, is that you can have that production PC on multiple networks. So you can have it connected to your local area network so that you can receive the NDI video feeds and the webcam feeds from the esports players and all of the things on your local area network. But you can also have a secondary network port for streaming. And this is a feature in OBS and other applications where you can say, hey, OBS, use this NIC port, and a NIC is a network interface card, right? Use this Ethernet cable, which is going to the router for my streaming, and use this Ethernet cable for my local area network where I have my IP video and my NDI video sources and all of that. In fact, right now, I can show you this right here. This is a great little device. Can I show this on the Zcam maybe? This is a cool little device. If your computer doesn't have two NIC cards, which many do not, you can purchase something like this, which is a USB to Ethernet adapter. So most computers just have one Ethernet cable. Like here's my computer here, one Ethernet cable. But if I wanted to connect to the school's network just for internet and my local area network for all of my connectivity for my computers, you can use, and these are like $20, a USB to Ethernet adapter, which is popular, especially also if you need more bandwidth on your local area network. Let's say it's a gigabit network, and each one of these Ethernet cables gives you a gigabit of data. So with NDI, that could be like 5 or 6 HD video sources of high bitrate video, and you need 10, you can plug in another gigabit of data through one of these. So was that technical enough for you, Julia?
For me?
I'm just joking. I got really technical really quick.
Well, I was going to say, I wanted to bring, because I'm still in work from home scenario, I wanted to bring my 10-year-old son in here and say, hey, listen to this.
And Outcast Chad is saying, just make sure it's a USB 3.0 cable because USB 2.0 will not support the data that we're talking about here.
I'll throw out. I've looked. It's been nice over the past year or two to really be engaged with those events, and even recently, people have had to adapt to do events online. And when we're talking about what if they can be on different networks, I mean, last night we're a charity partner with the High School Esports League, and they support us with donations to help get donations to support students in low-income areas. And the fun thing was watching their stream and knowing that people in production and casters and game and the players in the game for the tournament, the finals event last night, had 3,000 people watching on Twitch on the front page. And there were people in, I guess the total would be about 12 different locations all having that stream put on. So you've got the 10, I guess more than that, you have the 10 players all at their home playing online. I think it was Rainbow Six Siege last night, which is like the most popular game in high schools right now, with thousands of kids competing. And all those kids are playing on their own consoles or own PCs, I think it was last night. And then you have one of the production people doing stuff with transitioning scenes through like something like Stream Elements, and the two casters using OBS to gather information and send it to the production person so they can put it up on stream. So really, you talk about different networks, you had at least 15 different networks there all producing one bit of content for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, we could go a lot further into that because it's incredible. I mean, you're seeing people producing esports tournaments from all around the world, internet access and bandwidth. Folks, especially with COVID right now, really focusing on how do we connect remotely. You can control cameras from anywhere in the world. You can connect social media. I mean, you could have your social media guy in another country and he can be pumping information into, Stream Elements and Stream Labs, and that can be an interactive overlay. So the dispersion of teams and being able to work distributed is really incredible.
And I want to throw up, make sure we're aware of the gap as well. When you talk about bandwidth, urban and rural settings for students and really anyone struggle with access. I mean, that's what we get to focus on, is bringing that access as a nonprofit, because I think it's 9 million students don't have access to internet or devices at home right now. And when COVID's over, 9 million students will still have limited access to internet and devices. And the more we can support that, just think about what the United States could be as a competitor in the esports and the technology and the STEM space if we have more students with access for our next generation.
I'm also very excited about the CARES Act and the different Broadband USA United States funding opportunities available. We're going to cover that in an upcoming event. Is that next Wednesday, Julia, that we're going to be covering the funding for programs like this?
Actually, it's the 24th. So
Okay.
2 weeks from
So 2 weeks from today. Bubba, we'd love to have you there as well if you have time. But we're going to be covering all of the different various programs in place for schools to apply for funding. They can be right now. I've never seen as many billions of dollars in place for educations. Really, the idea is distance learning, right? How can we enable our organizations to support students in this world today? But a major part of that is access to broadband technology, access to computers. And if these schools are not applying for these grants, it's crazy, because I've never in my career, I've followed a lot of these grants. This CARES Act grant, I cannot remember exactly. I actually have the information here, but it's like some multiple billions of dollars for this CARES Act that is for education. Let's see if I can find it, but yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to come to that next week,
No, but
whenever it is.
Bubba, you made a great point about the internet access. There was an article I was reading, I think it was in the New York Times, maybe a month or so ago. And for some reason, there's this odd area right outside Ithaca, obviously where Cornell is, where these people had to go to do their work, their homework, everything, to like a parking lot and like sit in their cars and try to do school and things like that, just to get the internet access to a local business there, because the access is just so poor in the area. So I don't quite know, really the background of how that works and how that all works from a government perspective, but it's really fascinating.
Yeah, and maybe we'll talk about this next week. But the what you're saying is, we were as a world wholly unprepared for adapting everything. I even moving my online or my course at the university to online when it's actually a physical sports class was difficult, but there's teachers who were ready. And I look at different areas of the country for like a secondary school and elementary school that just weren't ready for it, but a lot of them really did an amazing job because they're teachers and they're always doing amazing jobs on what little they have. But being unprepared, but also just realizing like, well, now we've got to get buses with Wi-Fi hotspots and take them to apartments in low-income areas so the students there can learn and have distance learning. Those things like Paul's talking about, the CARES Act, that kind of funding is going to go to support those kind of initiatives.
Yeah.
Even if we don't get to go back to school in the fall, well, a lot of states aren't, but some are, and if they aren't, those are the opportunities that need to be in place. And maybe we can talk about that more next week, I hope.
Yeah, it's going to be the 24th. There's $30 billion for the CARES Act, and that is to support technological capabilities and access, hardware, software, connectivity, and instructional expertise to support remote learning specifically. And then there's other grants as well that apply more to esports. There's some specific for higher education. There's some specific for K through 12. There's some specific to broadband. And Julia has been working hard on putting a presentation together for that. In fact, we even purchased an insider's guide for an upcoming presentation for that. So that's all the time we have today, but I think we really set a good stage for the upcoming shows next week. What is next week, Julia?
Next week is the state of remote education.
Okay,
so,
yes.
It's kind of looking at where we are, where we may be, who knows, as Bubba just, alluded to the fact that some schools may not be in session in the fall. Please let it not be our school district. I'm a mom of three, like Paul, a parent of three. And yeah, I'm not the best home-based instructor, so we will see.
Well, it'll be interesting, that's for sure. And then the following week, we're talking all about the educational grants that are available. So stay tuned. You can get the Esports and Education book at PTZOptics.com. Bubba and everybody else who joined today, Timothy, Sergio, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Janice, and everyone watching online. What a great day. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I just added my email address in the chat, so you can sign up for show notifications with me.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Great meeting you. Have a great